The red and blue lights cut through the darkness like knives, and my heart dropped into my stomach. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles going white as I eased my foot off the accelerator. The highway stretched empty in both directions, just me, the distant mountains silhouetted against the starlit sky, and now, a police checkpoint materializing out of nowhere. "Stay calm," I whispered to myself, though my pulse hammered in my ears. "You haven't done anything wrong." But that's the thing about being different. Even when you've done nothing wrong, there's always that small voice in the back of your mind whispering that somehow, just by existing, you've broken some unspoken rule. I pulled up to the checkpoint, my car's headlights illuminating orange traffic cones and several officers in uniform. One of them held up his hand, signaling me to stop. I rolled down my window and the cool desert air rushed in, carrying with it the scent of sage and dust. "Good evening, sir," the officer said, leaning down slightly to look into my car. He was young, probably around my age, late 20s, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to look right through me. His badge caught the light. "Officer Martinez. License and registration, please." Of course, I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. I reached for my wallet, acutely aware of every movement I made. I'd heard too many stories, seen too many headlines. My hands trembled slightly as I handed over my documents. Officer Martinez studied my license with an intensity that made me squirm. "Adrian Chen," he read aloud, "you're a long way from San Francisco." "Yes, sir, I'm heading to Phoenix, family emergency." It wasn't entirely true. I was fleeing, really fleeing from a life that had crumbled around me, from a city that held too many memories of him. But Officer Martinez didn't need to know that. "Step out of the vehicle, please," he said, his expression unreadable. My stomach twisted. "Is something wrong?" "Routine check, step out of the vehicle." I complied, my legs shaky as I stood on the shoulder of the highway. Another officer approached, older, with a thick mustache and suspicious eyes. He began circling my car like a predator. "Where are you coming from tonight?" Officer Martinez asked, his tone professional but with an edge I couldn't quite place. "San Francisco, like I said, I left this afternoon." "That's a long drive, you alone?" The question hit me harder than it should have. Yes, I'm alone. I had been alone for 6 months, 2 weeks and 4 days, but who was counting? The older officer opened my car door and began searching inside. I watched helplessly as he rifled through my belongings, my duffel bag, the box of books in the backseat, the remains of a gas station sandwich on the passenger seat. "What's this?" he called out, holding up something small. My heart stopped. It was a photograph, creased and worn from being held too many times. In it, 2 young men stood on a beach at sunset, arms around each other, faces glowing with joy. One of them was me, 5 years younger and infinitely more hopeful. The other was Daniel. Officer Martinez took the photo from his colleague and examined it. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Who's this?" "A friend," I said quietly. "A friend," he repeated the words like they tasted bitter. "This kind of friendship, it's not normal where you're headed, Mr. Chen. Arizona's not California." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. My throat went dry. "I'm just passing through." "Are you?" The older officer stepped closer. "Because we've had reports of certain types soliciting at rest stops along this highway, corrupting decent people." Rage flared in my chest, hot and sudden, but I swallowed it down. This wasn't the time. "I'm not soliciting anything, I'm just trying to get to Phoenix." Officer Martinez was still staring at the photograph, and something flickered across his face, something I couldn't identify. Pain, recognition, it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Check his phone," the older officer ordered. "That's not," I started to protest, but Martinez was already holding out his hand expectantly. I had no choice. I unlocked my phone and handed it over, my mind racing through everything on it. Messages from friends asking if I was okay, job applications, and buried deep in my photos, an entire history of a love I'd tried and failed to erase. Martinez scrolled through it with an expression I couldn't read. The older officer wandered back to their patrol car, speaking into his radio. We stood there in the cone of harsh light, a young police officer and a heartbroken man, connected by a photograph and a phone full of secrets. "You still love him," Martinez said suddenly, so quietly I almost missed it. I looked up sharply. "What?" "The guy in the photo, you still love him." It wasn't a question. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw something I never expected to see: understanding. My voice cracked. "It doesn't matter, he's gone." Martinez glanced back at his partner, then stepped closer to me, lowering his voice. "I shouldn't be telling you this, but you need to be careful. This checkpoint, it's not just about drunk drivers. There are people out here who want to hurt people, who want to hurt certain people. Do you understand what I'm saying? People like us." He didn't say it, but the words hung in the air between us. "I understand," I whispered. He handed back my phone and license, his fingers brushing mine for just a second longer than necessary. "There's a diner about 20 miles east, the Night Owl. It's safe. You should stop there, rest for a bit before continuing. You look exhausted." "I'm fine. Please," the word was urgent, almost desperate. "Just trust me." Before I could respond, the older officer returned. "Everything check out?" Martinez straightened, his professional mask sliding back into place. "Yes, sir, Mr. Chen is free to go." "You sure about that?" "Positive, everything's in order." The older officer grunted disapprovingly but waved me off. "Get out of here, and Mr. Chen, drive safe. Wouldn't want anything to happen to you out here in the dark." It sounded like a warning. I practically ran back to my car, my hands shaking as I started the engine. As I pulled away, I glanced in my rearview mirror. Officer Martinez was watching me leave, his expression unreadable in the flashing lights. 20 miles later, I found the Night Owl Diner, a small building glowing like a beacon in the darkness. I pulled into the parking lot, my entire body trembling with adrenaline and something else, something that felt dangerously like hope. I didn't know it then, but that checkpoint would change everything. That photograph, that moment of recognition in a stranger's eyes, would set in motion events that would force me to confront not just where I was running to, but what I was running from. And Officer Martinez, he was about to become much more than just a cop at a checkpoint. He was about to become the reason I finally stopped running. The Night Owl Diner looked like something out of a 1950s postcard, all chrome and neon, with a flickering sign that buzzed against the darkness. Through the windows, I could see red vinyl booths and a long counter with spinning stools. At this hour, nearly midnight, the place was almost empty except for a tired-looking waitress and a truck driver nursing coffee in the corner. I sat in my car for a long moment, my hands still gripping the steering wheel. My phone lay in the passenger seat and I couldn't stop staring at it. Officer Martinez had looked through it. He'd seen my messages, my photos, the evidence of a life I'd been trying to leave behind. But instead of judgment, there had been understanding in his eyes. "People like us." I grabbed my phone and headed inside. A bell chimed as I pushed through the door, and the waitress, her name tag read Dolores, looked up with a practiced smile. "Take a seat anywhere, honey, I'll be right with you." I slid into a booth near the back, positioning myself so I could see the door. Old habits. Daniel used to tease me about it, how I always needed to see the exits, always calculating escape routes. "You're like a secret agent," he'd laugh, kissing my cheek, "or maybe just paranoid." "Practical," I'd correct him, "there's a difference." But he was wrong about one thing: I wasn't paranoid. I was realistic. Growing up gay in a small town in Ohio had taught me that safety was never guaranteed, that acceptance could turn to hostility in a heartbeat. Even in San Francisco, with its rainbow flags and pride parades, I'd never fully let my guard down. And now here I was, in a diner in the middle of nowhere, Arizona, at a checkpoint where a cop had looked at me with recognition, not disgust. What did it mean? Dollars appeared with a menu and a glass of water. "Long night, hun." "You could say that." I ordered coffee and a slice of pie, apple, because Daniel had always insisted apple pie could fix anything. "You want that a la mode?" "No thank you, just the pie." Daniel would have gotten ice cream. He'd had this way of finding joy in the smallest things, of turning ordinary moments into celebrations. It was one of the things I'd loved most about him, and one of the things that made his absence so unbearable. I checked my phone while I waited. 3 missed calls from my mother, 2 texts from my college roommate Sarah asking if I'd made it to Phoenix yet. I ignored them all and opened my photos instead, scrolling through years of memories I couldn't seem to delete. That's Daniel at my graduation, beaming with pride, holding a bouquet of flowers he'd driven an hour to get from our favorite florist. Daniel at Thanksgiving dinner with my family, charming my grandmother in Mandarin he'd spent months learning. Daniel on our anniversary, his eyes bright with love as he asked me to move in with him. And then the later photos, the ones that hurt more. Daniel's smile not quite reaching his eyes. The distance growing between us in each frame, a chasm neither of us knew how to bridge. The last photo I'd taken of him 3 days before he left when he thought I wasn't looking. He'd been staring out our apartment window at the San Francisco fog, and the sadness on his face had been so profound it had taken my breath away. I should have asked him what was wrong, I should have fought harder to keep him. Instead, I'd let him go. "Coffee and pie," Dolores announced, setting them down in front of me. "You look like you could use something stronger, but this'll have to do." I managed a weak smile. "This is perfect, thank you." She lingered for a moment and I could feel her maternal concern radiating like heat. "You okay, honey? You're not in any kind of trouble, are you?" "No, I'm just," the bell over the door chimed, cutting me off. Officer Martinez walked in. He was out of uniform now, wearing jeans and a plain gray t-shirt that made him look younger, less intimidating. His eyes scanned the diner and landed on me immediately, as if he'd known exactly where I'd be. My heart began to race. He crossed to my booth and without asking permission slid into the seat across from me. Up close, without the harsh checkpoint lights, I could see he had a small scar above his left eyebrow and flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "Hi," he said simply. "Hi, I managed. Should you be here?" "Probably not." He ran a hand through his hair, looking nervous. "My shift ended 20 minutes ago. I got in my truck, started driving home, and then," he trailed off, shaking his head. "This is crazy, I shouldn't have come." "But you did." "Yeah, I did." He met my eyes and the intensity there made my breath catch. "That photo in your car, the way you looked when I handed back your phone, I couldn't stop thinking about it." Dolores appeared with another coffee cup, setting it down in front of Martinez without comment. Small-town diners, they saw everything and said nothing. Martinez wrapped his hands around the cup. "I'm Ethan, by the way, Ethan Martinez." "Adrian, but you already knew that." "Right, from your license." He smiled slightly and it transformed his face, softening the hard edges. "Look, I'm not good at this, I don't usually follow people from checkpoints," I supplied. "Talk to people about this," he corrected quietly, "about being." He couldn't say the word. Even here in this almost empty diner, the weight of it was too much. "Gay," I finished for him, "about being gay." He flinched slightly but nodded. "Nobody knows, not my family, not my partner at work, nobody. This job, this town, it's not San Francisco, you can't just be yourself here." "I know," I said gently, "I grew up in a town like this." "Then why did you leave California, why come here?" The question was so direct it caught me off guard. I looked down at my pie, suddenly not hungry. "I'm not staying, just passing through." "Because of him, the guy in the photo." Daniel saying his name out loud hurt. His name is Daniel. "What happened?" I laughed bitterly. "What always happens. We loved each other and it wasn't enough. He wanted things I couldn't give him. Commitment, marriage, kids through surrogacy, a future, and I was too scared, too damaged from my past to even imagine that kind of happiness could last. So he left." "So he left," I confirmed. "6 months ago, moved to New York for a job opportunity. We tried to stay in touch, but," I gestured helplessly, "every conversation hurt, every text was a reminder of what we'd lost. Eventually, we just stopped." Ethan was quiet for a long moment, studying me. "And now you're running." "Now I'm running," I agreed. "My cousin in Phoenix offered me a place to stay, a fresh start. I thought maybe if I got far enough away from San Francisco, from all the memories, I could finally move on." "Has it worked?" I looked at him, this stranger who'd appeared at a checkpoint like fate, who'd somehow seen right through me with a single glance. "Not yet." Dolores refilled our coffees and we sat in comfortable silence. Outside, a semi-truck pulled into the lot, its engine rumbling. The clock on the wall ticked steadily toward 1 a.m. "Can I tell you something?" Ethan said finally, "something I've never told anyone." "Of course." He took a deep breath. "When I was 17, I fell in love with my best friend, Miguel. We'd known each other since we were kids, played baseball together, got in trouble together, did everything together. And one night after graduation, we got drunk on his dad's tequila and we kissed." His voice dropped even lower. It was the best night of my life and the worst, because the next morning Miguel pretended it never happened, wouldn't look at me, wouldn't talk about it. A week later he enlisted in the Marines and left town. I haven't seen him since. Ethan, I breathed, I'm so sorry. I joined the police academy partly to prove something to my family, to this town, to prove I was a man, strong, capable, normal. He laughed without humor. But also because I thought maybe if I became the law, I could protect people like me, like us, people who have to hide who they are just to survive. That checkpoint tonight, I said slowly. Your partner, he was looking for gay people, wasn't he? That's what all that was about. Ethan's jaw tightened. Officer Reynolds is old school. He thinks he's protecting the community by harassing anyone he deems suspicious. Gay people, trans people, anyone who doesn't fit his narrow definition of normal. The department knows, but they look the other way. And you let them. What choice do I have? His voice was anguished. If I speak up, if I defend people too vigorously, questions get asked. My career ends, my family finds out, and I become exactly the kind of person Reynolds loves to target at checkpoints. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. He stared at it like I'd performed a miracle, this simple gesture of connection that straight people took for granted every day. You're not alone, I told him. I know it feels that way, but you're not. How do you do it? He asked. How did you find the courage to be yourself? The question struck me because I wasn't sure I had an answer. I don't know if I ever really did, I admitted. Even in San Francisco, even with Daniel, I always held something back. My parents still don't talk about my lifestyle at family dinners. My grandmother pretends Daniel was just my roommate. And when he left, when I couldn't make our relationship work, I felt like maybe everyone was right. Maybe I'm not capable of the kind of love that lasts. That's not true. Isn't it? I let the best thing that ever happened to me walk away because I was too afraid to fight for it. Ethan squeezed my hand. It's not too late, you could call him. And say what? Sorry, I was too broken to love you properly. How about I'm still in love with you and I was an idiot? Despite everything, I smiled. Is that what you'd say to Miguel if you could? He considered this. Yeah, I think it is. We sat there, two broken men in a desert diner holding hands across a table sticky with syrup. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, indifferent to our small human dramas, but in that moment, in that place, we'd found something rare and precious: recognition. Someone who understood. What are you going to do now? Ethan asked. Keep driving to Phoenix. I thought about it, the empty apartment my cousin had promised, the fresh start that suddenly felt more like running away than moving forward. And I thought about Daniel in New York going on with his life, maybe even dating someone new, someone braver than me, someone better. I don't know, I said honestly. What about you? I have a shift tomorrow afternoon. I'll put on my uniform, work the checkpoint with Reynolds, and pretend to be someone I'm not, same as always. But there was a resignation in his voice that hadn't been there before, a weariness. That's not much of a life. No, he agreed, it's not. The truck driver at the counter stood up, dropped some bills on the counter, and left. Now it was just us, dolers wiping down tables at the far end of the diner and the hum of the refrigerator. Can I ask you something? I said. At the checkpoint, when you looked at my phone, what did you see? Ethan's expression softened. I saw someone who loved deeply, the photos, the messages, even the ones you'd saved from months ago. You'd kept everything. Every good morning text, every inside joke, every photo. That's not someone who didn't fight hard enough, Adrian. That's someone who loved with everything he had. Tears pricked my eyes. Then why did he leave? I don't know, but maybe you should ask him. I can't. Why not? Because what if he's moved on? What if he's happy now and I'm just this painful reminder of something that didn't work out? Ethan leaned forward. Or what if he's sitting in a diner somewhere, looking at old photos on his phone and wondering if you're thinking about him too? The possibility hung between us, fragile and terrifying. My phone buzzed on the table, a text from Sarah. Adrian, please just let me know you're safe. You disappeared and we're all worried. I typed back quickly, I'm fine, stopped at a diner, we'll call tomorrow. When I looked up, Ethan was watching me. Your friends care about you. I know, I've been terrible at staying in touch. After Daniel left, I kind of withdrew from everything. That's grief, he said gently. You're allowed to grieve. Even if I'm the one who caused it. Especially then. We talked for another hour, sharing stories of our lives. Ethan told me about growing up in a religious household, about his mother's dreams of him marrying a nice girl and giving her grandchildren, about the fear that lived in his chest every day that someone would discover his secret. I told him about Daniel, really told him in a way I hadn't been able to with anyone else, about how we'd met at a bookstore both reaching for the same novel, about our first kiss in the rain after a concert, about the lazy Sunday morning spent in bed, reading the newspaper and arguing about politics, about the way Daniel made me laugh, how he'd leave little notes around the apartment for me to find, how he'd believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. He sounds amazing, Ethan said. He was as he is amazing. You're still using present tense. I realized he was right. I guess part of me isn't ready to make him past tense. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Around 2:30 a.m., Dolars came over with the check. Boys, I hate to kick you out, but I need to close up. My shift ended an hour ago. Of course, I said, reaching for my wallet. Sorry for keeping you. She waved me off. Honey, I've been working this counter for 30 years. I've seen every kind of story there is. Sometimes people just need a safe place to figure things out. She looked meaningfully between Ethan and me. You two take care of each other, you hear? We paid and stepped out into the cool desert night. The air smelled clean and sharp, so different from the fog and salt of San Francisco. Overhead, the Milky Way stretched across the sky in a river of light, something you could never see in the city. I'd forgot how beautiful the stars are, I murmured. Ethan stood beside me looking up. I see them every night and still forget sometimes. We stood there for a moment, two silhouettes against the infinite sky. Adrian, Ethan said finally, can I give you my number? Not for anything, I mean I'm not, he stumbled over the words. I just think maybe we could both use a friend who understands. I'd like that, I said. We exchanged numbers and then stood there awkwardly, neither of us quite ready to leave. Thank you, I said, for stopping me at the checkpoint, for coming here, for understanding. Thank you for not making me feel so alone. He stepped forward suddenly and hugged me, brief and fierce, then he pulled back, looking embarrassed. I should go, my roommate will wonder where I've been. Drive safe. You too, and Adrian, don't give up on him, on Daniel. Some things are worth fighting for even when you're scared. He walked to his truck, an old Ford that had seen better days, and drove off into the darkness. I watched his taillights disappear down the highway, feeling like something had shifted in the universe. Like maybe stopping at that checkpoint had been exactly what I needed. I got in my car and sat there for a long moment, engine idling, staring at my phone. Daniel's contact was still there, I'd never been able to delete it. Our last text exchange was from 3 months ago. Daniel, saw something today that made me think of you, hope you're doing okay. Me, thanks, you too. Such a sterile conversation for two people who'd once shared everything. My finger hovered over his name. It was almost 3 a.m. in Arizona, which meant it was almost 5 a.m. in New York. Daniel had always been an early riser. He might be awake, starting his morning routine, making that awful green smoothie he swore by. Before I could talk myself out of it, I pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. I was about to hang up when Adrian. His voice hit me like a physical force. 6 months of silence, and just hearing him say my name made tears spring to my eyes. Hi, I managed. I know it's early, I'm sorry if I woke you. You didn't, I couldn't sleep. He paused. Where are you okay? I'm okay, I'm in Arizona, middle of nowhere actually. I stopped at a diner and I needed to hear your voice. There was a long silence, then I miss you. The words broke something open in my chest. I miss you too, God Daniel, I miss you so much. Then why did you let me go? His voice cracked. Why didn't you fight for us? Because I was scared, because I didn't think I deserved you, because every good thing in my life has always ended and I thought if I let you go first, it would hurt less. Did it hurt less? No, it hurt more. It's been 6 months and it still hurts every single day. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, and I imagined him in his New York apartment, probably standing by the window like he used to do when he was thinking. I'm in Arizona because I was trying to run away, I continued. From you, from us, from everything, but I met someone tonight, a cop at a checkpoint of all things, and he helped me realize something. I don't want to run anymore. I don't want to be afraid of happiness just because it might not last. Adrian. Wait, let me finish. I love you, Daniel. I never stopped, and I know I messed everything up. I know I was too scared to give you what you needed, but if there's any chance at all, I want to try again. I want to fight for us this time. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Daniel, are you still there? I'm here. His voice was thick with emotion. I'm here, and I can't believe you just said all that. I should have said it 6 months ago. I should have said it every day we were together. You really mean it? You're ready for everything, marriage and kids and a real future. I thought about Ethan, hiding who he was from everyone in his life. I thought about the checkpoint, the officer's warning about people like us. I thought about all the years I'd spent playing it safe, keeping parts of myself hidden, afraid to reach for what I really wanted. Yes, I said firmly, I'm ready. I want all of it as long as it's with you. Daniel laughed and it sounded like crying. You're insane. You're in Arizona, I'm in New York, and you're telling me this at 5 in the morning. I know, but I couldn't wait another minute. Where in Arizona are you exactly? I looked around at the empty parking lot, the desert stretching away in all directions. Somewhere between nowhere and the middle of nowhere. Why? Because I need to see you. I need to look at you when you say these things. My heart leaped. You want me to come to New York? No, I could hear the smile in his voice. I want you to stay exactly where you are. I'm coming to you. Daniel, that's crazy. That's a 5-hour flight and it's the middle of the night. I'll catch the first flight out, should be there by early afternoon if I'm lucky. Text me the address of that diner. You're serious? Adrian, I have been miserable for 6 months. I moved to New York thinking distance would help me get over you. But every morning I wake up reaching for you, every night I dream about you, every good thing that happens I want to tell you first, so yes, I'm serious, I'm getting on a plane right now. Tears were streaming down my face. Okay, yes, I'll send you the address. And Adrian, don't you dare leave that diner, don't you dare run away again. I won't, I promise. I love you, I never stopped either. I love you too. After we hung up, I sat in my car and cried, great, heaving sobs of relief and joy and terror, because this was real now. This was me, finally choosing love over fear. I texted Ethan, thank you for tonight, you were right, some things are worth fighting for, I called him. His response came a few minutes later, and he's getting on a plane, he's coming here. That's amazing, Adrian, I'm so happy for you. What about you, what are you going to do? There was a long pause before his next message. I don't know, but talking to you tonight, it made me realize I can't keep living like this. Maybe it's time to stop hiding. That's scary. Terrifying but necessary. I looked at the time. Daniel wouldn't be here for at least 12 hours, probably longer. But the night owl was closed and I couldn't just sit in my car in an empty parking lot all day. I pulled out of the lot and started driving, not away but just somewhere. The highway unwound before me, and as the sky began to lighten with the first hints of dawn, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. I found a cheap motel about 10 miles from the diner. The desert rose in with its faded pink stucco and a sign advertising color TV and air conditioning like they were luxuries. The clerk was an elderly man who looked like he'd seen everything twice and been unimpressed both times. How long you staying? He asked, not looking up from his crossword puzzle. Just tonight, maybe 2 nights. 45 a night, cash or card. I paid for 2 nights just in case and took the key to room 114. The room smelled like old cigarettes and industrial cleaner, but it was clean enough. A double bed with a faded floral bedspread, a TV from the 1990s, and a small bathroom with rust stains in the sink. I collapsed onto the bed and stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. Daniel was coming. After 6 months of silence, of aching loneliness, of trying and failing to move on, he was coming. What if he got here and realized it was a mistake? What if seeing me in person reminded him of why he'd left? What if I froze up again, too scared to be vulnerable? My phone buzzed. Daniel, at the airport, flight leaves in an hour, landing in Phoenix at 1 p.m. your time. I typed back, I can't believe you're really doing this. Believe it, I'm not letting you go twice. I tried to sleep but couldn't. Too much adrenaline, too many emotions. Instead, I showered and changed into clean clothes, then sat on the bed and did something I hadn't done in months. I looked through all my photos of Daniel. Not just the recent ones, but all of them. Our entire history together, preserved in pixels and memory. There was our first date at the marina, both of us windblown and laughing. The Halloween when we dressed as characters from our favorite book. Christmas with my family, Daniel fitting in so naturally it had made my heart ache. His 30th birthday party, surrounded by friends, his arm around my waist. And then the later ones, the subtle shift, both of us smiling but the warmth not quite reaching our eyes, the distance growing. There was one photo I'd taken without him knowing about a month before he left. We'd been at brunch with friends, and while everyone else was laughing at some story, Daniel had been staring at me with such profound sadness that I'd barely been able to breathe. I'd snapped the photo quickly, not sure why I needed to capture that moment. Looking at it now, I understood. He'd already been saying goodbye. I had been too afraid to see it. Around 9 a.m., I got a text from Ethan. "You up?" "Yeah, can't sleep, too nervous." "Wanna get breakfast? I'm off duty today." I hesitated, then, "Sure, where?" "There's a place called Maria's about 15 minutes from the Night Owl. Best breakfast burritos in Arizona, meet you there at 10. See you then." Maria's turned out to be a small family restaurant tucked into a strip mall, the kind of place with plastic tablecloths and pictures of food on the menu. But it smelled amazing: coffee and chorizo and fresh tortillas. Ethan was already there, sitting in a corner booth. He looked tired but smiled when he saw me. We weren't the only customers, so we kept our voices low, our conversation careful. "How'd it go with Daniel?" he asked after we'd ordered. "He's on a plane right now, should be here by early afternoon." Wow. I know, I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and this will all have been a dream. The waitress brought our food, enormous breakfast burritos smothered in green chili, and for a few minutes we just ate in comfortable silence. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said eventually. "Last night you said you grew up in a small town like this. How did you get out?" I thought about those years, the constant vigilance, the fear of being discovered, the way I'd taught myself to monitor every gesture, every inflection in my voice. "Scholarship to Berkeley," I said. "It was my ticket out. I studied like my life depended on it because in a way it did. Got a full ride, moved to California when I was 18 and never looked back." "Did your family know about you being gay?" "Not until I was 23 and brought Daniel home for Thanksgiving. My dad didn't speak to me for a year. My mom cried and asked where she'd gone wrong, but eventually they came around. Not fully, they still don't really talk about it, but they accepted him," I corrected bitterly. "That must have been hard." "It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than coming out to myself, harder than the first time I told someone I was gay. Because telling your parents means watching them grieve the version of you they thought they had." Ethan pushed his food around his plate. "I don't think I could do it. My mother would be devastated. She's already planning my wedding to this girl from church I've known since childhood. Maria, sweet girl, but you can't love her the way she deserves." "No," he looked up at me, pain etched in his features. "Sometimes I think about just doing it anyway, marrying her, having kids, living the life everyone expects. Would that be so terrible?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Because you'd be living a lie, and lies like that destroy everyone involved. Maria deserves someone who loves her completely, and you deserve to be yourself. Even if being myself means losing everything. Especially then." He was quiet for a long moment. "Miguel reached out last week. After 10 years of silence, he sent me a Facebook message." My heart clenched. "What did he say?" "That he was sorry, that he's been thinking about that night for a decade, that he joined the Marines to try to fix himself but it didn't work. He's out now, living in San Diego with his partner of 5 years. Ethan's voice cracked. "He's happy, Adrian, he found a way to be happy and I'm still here hiding." "What did you say back?" "Nothing." I stared at that message for 3 days and couldn't figure out how to respond. What do you say to the person who showed you who you were and then ran away? Maybe the same thing I'm saying to Daniel, that you're ready now, that you're done running. Ethan looked at me with those intense eyes. Am I though? Am I really ready to blow up my entire life? I don't know, only you can answer that. We finished our breakfast and Ethan paid despite my protests. As we walked out to the parking lot, he turned to me. Thank you for listening. I haven't been able to talk to anyone about this stuff ever. Any time, really. I gave him my number again. Call me if you need to talk, even after I leave Arizona. You think you'll leave? I thought Daniel was coming here. He is, but we can't stay here forever. We'll have to figure out what comes next. New York, San Francisco, somewhere new entirely, I don't know. Must be nice to have options. The sadness in his voice made me reach out and squeeze his shoulder. You have options too, Ethan, you just have to be brave enough to take them. He nodded, but I could see he didn't quite believe it. Back at the motel, the hours crawled by. I tried to watch TV but couldn't focus. I paced the small room until I'd worn a path in the ugly carpet. I checked my phone obsessively. At 12:30, Daniel texted, landed, getting rental car, see you soon. My heart kicked into overdrive. This was really happening. In less than an hour I would see him again, touch him. Look into those warm brown eyes that had haunted my dreams for 6 months. I changed my shirt 3 times, fixed my hair, then messed it up again because Daniel always said he liked it messy. I brushed my teeth twice. I was a nervous wreck. At 1:45 there was a knock at the door. I opened it and there he was. Daniel. He looked the same and completely different. His hair was shorter, styled differently. He'd lost a little weight and there were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. He was wearing jeans and a blue button-down that I'd bought him 2 Christmases ago, and the sight of it made my throat tight. For a moment we just stared at each other. Hi, he said softly. Hi. Can I come in? I stepped back and he walked into the shabby motel room. He looked around at the faded bedspread, the ancient TV, the water-stained ceiling, and then back at me. So this is where you've been hiding. I wasn't hiding, I stopped. Okay, I was hiding. He smiled slightly and it was like the sun coming out. Classic Adrian. Daniel, Let me go first, he interrupted. I practiced what I was going to say on the plane. If I don't say it now, I'll lose my nerve. I nodded, my hands shaking. He took a deep breath. I left because I was tired of feeling like I was always too much. Too needy, too demanding, too invested in a future you weren't sure you wanted. Every time I brought up marriage or kids or even just moving to a bigger apartment together, you'd get this look on your face, like I was trying to trap you. Daniel. Please, let me finish. I know you had your reasons. I know your childhood was hard, that your family didn't accept you easily, that you've spent your whole life waiting for the other shoe to drop. But I couldn't keep waiting for you to believe that we were real, that we weren't going to disappear. Tears were streaming down my face. You were right to leave. I was so scared of losing you that I pushed you away. I made you feel like loving me was asking for too much when really you were offering me everything I'd ever wanted. Then why, his voice broke, why couldn't you just let yourself be happy? Because everyone I've ever loved has left or pulled away. My parents when they found out I was gay. My first boyfriend who cheated on me with a woman to prove he wasn't really gay. My college roommate who moved out when he found out about me. I learned that love was temporary, that acceptance always came with conditions. I stepped closer to him, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. But you, Daniel, you loved me without conditions. You saw all my broken pieces and loved me anyway, and that terrified me more than anything. Why? Because if you could love me like that completely and unconditionally, then I had something to lose. And I've spent my whole life preparing for loss, not for permanence. Daniel reached out and cupped my face in his hands. His touch was so familiar it hurt. You don't have to prepare for loss anymore, I'm not going anywhere. You did though, you left. I left because I couldn't watch you run away from me slowly, but I never stopped loving you, not for a single day. I never stopped either, I whispered. Every morning I'd wake up and forget for just a second that you were gone, and then I'd remember and it would feel like losing you all over again. He kissed me then, soft and tentative like we were teenagers again. I kissed him back, pouring 6 months of loneliness and regret and desperate love into it. When we finally pulled apart, we were both crying. I'm ready now, I told him, for everything. Marriage, kids, a future, all of it. I want to build a life with you and I'm not going to run away from it anymore. What changed? What happened between yesterday when you were driving to Phoenix to escape, and this morning when you called me. I told him about the checkpoint, about Officer Martinez and the recognition in his eyes, about the diner and our conversation, about Ethan's story of Miguel and how seeing someone else trapped by fear had made me realize what I was doing to myself. There's this cop, probably not much older than us, who spent 10 years hiding who he is because he's afraid of losing everything. And last night, looking at him, I saw my future. Alone, scared, always pretending. And I realized I'd rather risk everything for a chance at real happiness than play it safe and be miserable. Daniel listened intently, his thumb stroking my cheek. Do you think he'll be okay, this cop? I don't know, I hope so, but that's his journey to figure out. And what about ours? Where do we go from here? I took his hand and led him to sit on the bed. I've been thinking about that. You're in New York, I was heading to Phoenix. Neither of those feels right anymore. So what does feel right? Wherever we're together, I don't care if it's New York or San Francisco or some place we've never been. As long as I'm with you, that's home. Daniel's smile was radiant. I always said you were secretly a romantic under all that cynicism. Don't tell anyone, I have a reputation to maintain. He laughed and kissed me again, deeper this time. We fell back onto the bed, holding each other like we'd been separated for years instead of months. I memorized the feel of him, the way he fit against me, the sound of his breathing, the smell of his cologne mixed with airplane recycled air. I missed this, Daniel murmured against my neck. I missed you so much it physically hurt. I know, me too. We lay there for a long time, just holding each other, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about New York, the job he'd taken that turned out to be terrible, the tiny apartment in Brooklyn that cost twice what our place in San Francisco did, the loneliness of trying to start over in a city where he knew no one. I told him about the last 6 months in San Francisco, how I'd become a ghost in our apartment, unable to change anything because it all reminded me of him. How I'd finally given notice and packed up, thinking if I could just get far enough away, the pain would ease. It didn't though, I said. If anything, it got worse, because at least in San Francisco I could walk past places we'd been together. I could pretend you might come back. On the road, heading away from everything, I had to face the fact that I'd lost you. You didn't lose me, Daniel said firmly. I was always yours. Even when I was angry and hurt and trying to move on, I was always yours. Around 6 p.m., we ventured out to find food. Daniel was charmed by the desolate beauty of the desert landscape, so different from either San Francisco or New York. It's peaceful, he said, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. I can see why people come out here to think. We ended up back at the Night Owl Diner. Dolores was back on shift and did a double take when she saw us walk in together. Well, would you look at that, she said with a knowing smile. I had a feeling you two would figure things out. How did you know? I asked. Honey, I've been watching people fall in love in this diner for 30 years. I can spot a happy ending when I see one brewing. We ordered dinner, burgers and fries and milkshakes like teenagers on a date and talked about the future. Real, concrete plans instead of vague possibilities. I gave notice on my apartment in Brooklyn, Daniel said. Last week, actually. I couldn't do it anymore living in that city pretending to be okay. Where were you planning to go? Home to my parents temporarily. I was going to figure it out from there. He reached across the table and took my hand. But this is better. This is so much better. What about your job? I quit 2 days ago. Turns out telling your boss that you're leaving to chase after the love of your life is a pretty effective resignation speech. I stared at him. You quit your job, but you moved to New York for that position. I moved to New York to get away from the pain of losing you. The job was just an excuse. He squeezed my hand. I'm done making decisions based on fear or pride or anything other than what I actually want, and what I want is you. I want you too. I want us. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. How did it go? I typed back, he's here, we're figuring it out. That's great, really happy for you. How are you doing? There was a long pause, then I responded to Miguel, we're going to talk tomorrow. That's huge, Ethan, I'm proud of you. Don't be proud yet, I'm terrified. Being terrified means you're doing something important. Daniel watched me text, curious, is that the cop from last night? Yeah, he's taking a big step, reaching out to someone from his past. Like you did with me. Like I did with you. After dinner, we drove around aimlessly. Daniel navigating while I drove. We ended up on a dirt road that led to a lookout point over a canyon. The sunset painted the sky in impossible shades of orange and pink and purple, and in the distance, we could see the lights of small towns twinkling on. We sat on the hood of my car, Daniel leaning against me, my arm around his shoulders. I have a confession, he said. I've been carrying something around for 6 months, waiting for the right moment to give it to you, even though I thought that moment might never come. He pulled a small box from his pocket. My heart stopped, Daniel. Before you panic, it's not what you think. Well, it is, but also it isn't. He opened the box. Inside were two simple silver rings, each engraved with a date the day we'd met. I bought these a week before I left. I was going to propose, but then I realized I couldn't, not when you were so scared. It wouldn't have been fair to either of us. I stared at the rings, tears blurring my vision. You were going to propose. I was, and then I wasn't. And then I moved to New York and kept these in my nightstand drawer, taking them out some nights and wondering what you would have said. I would have said yes, I told him. Even scared, even broken, I would have said yes, because you're the best thing that ever happened to me. Would you say yes now? I looked at him, at this man who'd crossed the country on a moment's notice, who'd loved me through my worst fears, who'd waited 6 months for me to be ready. Yes, I said firmly. Yes, I'll marry you if you're really asking. I'm really asking? He took out one of the rings and slipped it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. Marry me, Adrian Chen, make me the happiest man alive. Yes, I said again, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, yes, yes. I kissed him as the sun sank below the horizon, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I wasn't afraid of the future. We spent the night at the Desert Rose Inn, tangled up in each other, talking and kissing and making up for 6 months apart. At some point, we ordered pizza from a place that was miraculously still open and ate it sitting on the bed, our feet touching, unable to stop smiling at each other. So where should we live? Daniel asked, stealing a piece of pepperoni from my slice. New York's out, San Francisco has too many memories, Phoenix was never really the plan. What about somewhere completely new, Portland, Seattle, Denver? Or we could go small, find a town where we can actually afford to buy a house, maybe start that bookstore you always talked about. I'd forgotten about that dream, the cozy little bookstore with a coffee shop attached, a place where people could browse and read and feel safe. Daniel and I had talked about it in those lazy Sunday morning conversations, but I'd always dismissed it as fantasy. You remember that? I remember everything, he said softly. Every dream, every plan, every throwaway comment. I've been holding on to them, hoping we'd get a chance to make them real. A bookstore, I said slowly, testing the idea. That would be amazing, scary but amazing. Everything worth doing is scary. We fell asleep around 3 a.m., wrapped around each other, and for the first time in months I didn't have nightmares. Instead, I dreamed of a small shop with big windows, shelves lined with books, and Daniel behind the counter, smiling at customers. I woke to sunlight streaming through the thin curtains and Daniel's arms around me. He was already awake, watching me with a soft expression. Morning, he murmured. Morning, I kissed him, tasting toothpaste. How long have you been awake? About an hour. I kept thinking I was dreaming, so I had to stay awake to make sure you were really here. I'm really here, and I'm not going anywhere. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, multiple messages from Ethan. I talked to Miguel last night for 3 hours. He apologized for everything, said leaving me was the biggest regret of his life. We're meeting for coffee today, I'm freaking out. I texted back, you've got this, just be honest, be yourself. That's what I'm afraid of. I know, but it's also the only way forward. Daniel read over my shoulder, he sounds scared. He's about to stop hiding for the first time in his life, that's terrifying. Like you were terrified to call me. Exactly like that. We got cleaned up and checked out of the motel. The plan was to drive to Phoenix. Daniel's rental car could be returned there and figure out next steps. But first I wanted to find Ethan to make sure he was okay. I called him, hey, where are you meeting Miguel? There's a coffee shop in Tucson, about an hour from where you are, why? Because you shouldn't do this alone. Daniel and I can meet you there, grab coffee nearby, be moral support. You do that. Of course, text me the address. We met Ethan at a Starbucks in a shopping center. He looked like he hadn't slept, his eyes red-rimmed and his hands shaking as he held his coffee cup. He'll be here in 20 minutes, Ethan said. I haven't seen him in 10 years and in 20 minutes he's going to walk through that door. And you're going to be honest with him, I said, about how you felt then, how you feel now, and what you want. What if he's changed his mind? What if seeing me in person makes him realize it was a mistake to reach out? Daniel spoke up for the first time. Then you'll know, and knowing is better than spending another 10 years wondering. Ethan looked at Daniel, really looked at him, and something in his expression shifted. You two look happy. We are, I said, reaching for Daniel's hand. For the first time in a long time, we really are. That's what I want, Ethan said quietly, to be able to hold someone's hand in public without being afraid, to introduce someone as my partner without having to lie, to just exist. You deserve that, Daniel told him. Everyone does. We stayed with Ethan until Miguel arrived. I saw him first, a tall, muscular man with close-cropped hair and tattoos visible under his rolled-up sleeves. He walked with the bearing of someone military-trained, but his eyes were nervous as they scanned the coffee shop. When he saw Ethan, his entire face transformed. That's him, Ethan breathed. Go, I urged, we'll be right over there if you need us. Ethan stood on shaky legs and walked toward Miguel. We watched as they met in the middle of the coffee shop, both of them frozen for a moment. And then Miguel smiled, a brilliant, genuine smile, and said something that made Ethan laugh. Daniel and I moved to a table across the room, giving them privacy but staying close enough that Ethan knew we were there. Think they'll be okay? Daniel asked. I think they have a chance, and sometimes that's all you need. We watched as Ethan and Miguel talked, their body language gradually relaxing. At one point, Miguel reached across the table and took Ethan's hand, and Ethan didn't pull away. Progress. You know what I love about this? Daniel said. How you've become this unexpected catalyst for other people's happiness. You stopped at a checkpoint, met a scared cop, and now he's facing his past and maybe finding his future. I didn't do anything special. You were yourself, you were honest about your pain and your love, that's everything, Adrian. We stayed for about an hour, then quietly left. As we walked to the car, I texted Ethan, we're heading out, you've got this, call me later and let me know how it goes. His response came immediately, thank you for everything, you showed me it's possible to be brave. You showed yourself, I just witnessed it. Daniel and I drove toward Phoenix, but the urgency to get there had evaporated. Instead, we took the scenic route, stopping at roadside attractions and tiny towns, talking about everything. What should we do about living arrangements short-term? Daniel asked. I don't have an apartment anymore, you don't have an apartment anymore, we're basically homeless. Romantically homeless, I corrected. We could stay with my cousin in Phoenix for a bit, look for jobs and a place to live. Or, Daniel said slowly, we could be spontaneous. Pick a city we've always wanted to visit, find a short-term rental and just explore, figure out where we want to plant roots. That's incredibly irresponsible. I know, he grinned, isn't it great? I thought about the Adrian from a week ago, the one who'd been carefully planning his escape to Phoenix, who'd had every detail mapped out. That Adrian would never consider just wandering without a plan. But I wasn't that Adrian anymore. Okay, I said, let's do it, where should we go? What about Portland, or Austin, or Asheville? I've always wanted to see North Carolina in the fall. It's May. So we'll wait until fall, we can explore the whole country until then. The idea was ridiculous and impractical and absolutely perfect. Road trip, I said, feeling a smile spread across my face. A real road trip, not running away but running toward. Toward what? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out together. We stopped for lunch at a Mexican restaurant in a small town whose name I immediately forgot. Over carnitas and horchata, we started planning. We'd spend a month exploring the Southwest, then head up the coast. We'd work remote jobs or pick up temporary work in towns we liked. We'd stay in cheap motels and Airbnbs, cook some meals and eat out others and just live. My parents are going to think I've lost my mind, Daniel said, laughing. Mine too, but they'll get over it. Will they though? Your mom wasn't thrilled about you being gay. She's definitely not going to love you wandering the country with your boyfriend. Fiancé, I corrected, and no, she won't love it, but she doesn't have to, this is our life. Daniel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Our life, I love the sound of that. My phone rang, Ethan. How'd it go? I answered immediately. Good, really good, his voice was shaky but happy. We talked for 3 hours about everything that night, the last 10 years, why he ran, why I stayed here. And he wants to try, he lives in San Diego so it's not that far. We're going to take it slow, see each other on weekends, figure out if what we had is still there. That's amazing, Ethan. There's more. I told him about my job, about how I've been hiding, and he said something that hit me hard. He said, you can't protect people from the truth of who you are, you can only protect them from a lie. I glanced at Daniel, who was watching me with curious eyes. That's wise. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to come out to my family, to the department, to everyone. I'm terrified, but I'm going to do it. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, Adrian. Meeting you at that checkpoint, it felt like fate or something, like the universe putting the right person in front of me at exactly the right time. After we hung up, I told Daniel everything. You changed his life, Daniel said. We changed each other's lives, that's what connection does. We drove into Phoenix as the sun was setting, painting the city in shades of gold and amber. My cousin's apartment was in Tempe near the university, and when we arrived, she greeted us with raised eyebrows and a knowing smile. So this is Daniel, May said, looking between us, the one you've been mopping about for 6 months. I wasn't mopping. You were absolutely mopping, it was pathetic. She turned to Daniel. Hi, I'm May, Adrian's cooler, better-looking cousin, come in. We spent the evening catching up, eating takeout Thai food and explaining our road trip plans. May was enthusiastically supportive in that way only family can be, equal parts excited and skeptical. You two are really just going to wander the country, she asked. That's the plan, Daniel confirmed. No jobs lined up, no permanent address, nothing. Nope. She shook her head, smiling. You know what, good for you, life's too short to play it safe all the time. That night, Daniel and I lay in the guest room, exhausted and happy. Through the window, we could see the lights of Phoenix spreading out like a constellation. I keep thinking about Ethan, Daniel said quietly, about how scared he was to just be himself. It makes me grateful that we live in a time and place where we can do this, get engaged, plan a future, not have to hide. It's not perfect though. Even in San Francisco, there were people who glared at us when we held hands. And what happened at that checkpoint, that could have gone very differently. I know, but we have each other, and that makes us brave. I turned to face him in the darkness. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough before, when you needed me to be. You were as brave as you could be at the time, and now you're braver, that's all that matters. I love you, Daniel Zhao. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know that. I already know, but I'm excited to see you try anyway. We kissed and then we slept, wrapped in each other's arms and the promise of tomorrow. Over the next few weeks, we established a routine that was wonderfully unroutined. We'd wake up in whatever town we'd landed in, find a local coffee shop, and spend the morning working on our laptops. Daniel had picked up some freelance graphic design work, and I'd started writing, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. Afternoons were for exploring. We hiked in national parks, visited quirky roadside attractions, got lost in small towns and found unexpected treasures. We ate at diners and food trucks and occasionally splurged on nice restaurants. We met people, fellow travelers, locals, other couples on their own journeys. And slowly I began to heal. The weight I'd been carrying, the fear, the shame, the certainty that happiness was temporary started to lift. Not all at once but gradually, like the sun burning off morning fog. Daniel noticed the change. You smile more now, he told me one morning in Sedona, Arizona, as we watched the sunrise turn the red rocks golden. I feel more like smiling. Good, I missed your smile. We kept in touch with Ethan through texts and occasional calls. His coming out process was messy and painful but ultimately liberating. His mother cried and said she needed time. His father didn't speak to him for 2 weeks. But several of his coworkers surprised him by being supportive, and the police department, perhaps not wanting a discrimination lawsuit, agreed to let him stay on the force as long as he maintained his professional standards. "It's not perfect," he told me during one call. "Some guys won't partner with me anymore. I get looks and comments, but I can breathe now, I don't have to pretend." "How's it going with Miguel?" "Really well, we're taking it slow, but I think this might be it, Adrian. I think he might be the one." After 10 years apart. Maybe we needed those 10 years to grow up, to figure out who we were, and now we get a second chance. "I'm really happy for you, Ethan." "I'm happy for you too, you sound different, lighter." He was right, I did feel lighter. In late June, Daniel and I found ourselves in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We'd rented a small casita for the month, and I'd been writing every morning while Daniel worked on a design project for a tech startup. The city was magical: art galleries and adobe buildings and food that made you want to cry. One afternoon, walking through the plaza, we stumbled upon a small bookstore with a "for sale" sign in the window. Daniel stopped walking. "Adrian, look." It was perfect: 2 stories, huge windows, exposed wooden beams, and enough space for a coffee bar in the front. The owner, an elderly woman named Gloria, was sitting inside reading. "Can we look around?" Daniel asked her. "Of course, though I should warn you, I'm retiring, looking for the right buyer to take over." We spent 2 hours exploring every corner of that bookstore. Gloria told us about the 30 years she'd spent building it, the customers who'd become friends, the countless lives touched by the books on these shelves. "Why are you selling?" I asked. "I'm 78, she said simply. "My husband passed last year and my daughter wants me to move closer to her in California. It's time." Daniel and I looked at each other, and I saw my own wild hope reflected in his eyes. "This is crazy," I whispered to him while Gloria made us tea. "We can't buy a bookstore, we have no money saved, no business plan, no idea what we're doing." "So, we'll figure it out. Isn't that what we've been doing this whole trip?" "That's different. This is a business, a real commitment." "And marriage isn't, a future together isn't." He took my hand. "We can do this, Adrian, we can make this our place, somewhere people feel safe and welcome and seen." I thought about all the times I'd dreamed of this, a space that was ours, that reflected our values, that could be a haven for people like us. People who needed to see themselves reflected in stories, who needed community, who needed refuge. "Let's talk to Gloria," I said. The conversation that followed was surreal. Gloria wanted to sell to someone who would love the store as much as she did, not to a corporation or someone who'd gut it and turn it into something else. When we told her about ourselves, about being engaged, about wanting to create a space that was inclusive and welcoming, she started crying. "My daughter is gay," she said quietly. "She never felt comfortable here growing up. I always wished I could have given her a place where she belonged. Maybe you too can do that for other people's daughters and sons." The price she named was shockingly reasonable. "I'm not looking to get rich," she explained. "I'm looking for the right stewards for something I've built with love." We told her we'd think about it, but as we walked back to our casita, I already knew my answer. "We have to do this," I said. "We really do." That night we called our families. The conversations were mixed. My mother was predictably concerned. "Adrian, you just got back together with Daniel. Now you want to buy a business? In New Mexico, why not come home, get a stable job, settle down properly?" "This is settling down, Mom, on our terms." My father was more direct. "Do you know anything about running a bookstore?" "No, but we'll learn." Daniel's parents were more supportive, though his mother worried about the financial risk. "What if it doesn't work out?" "Then we'll have tried," Daniel told her, "and that's better than wondering what if." We spent the next month doing due diligence, looking at the books, talking to accountants and lawyers, figuring out financing. My college roommate Sarah, who worked in banking, helped us put together a business plan. May cautioned a small business loan. And on August 1st we signed the papers. The bookstore was ours. Gloria cried as she handed over the keys. "Take care of this place," she said, "and take care of each other." "We will," Daniel promised. We spent the next 2 weeks deep cleaning, reorganizing, and putting our stamp on the space. We kept the name Gloria had given it, the open book, but added our own touches: a prominent LGBTQ+ section, A children's corner with diverse books, a coffee bar serving fair trade coffee and pastries from a local bakery, comfortable chairs and reading nooks, a community board for local events. And on the wall behind the register we hung a sign, "All are welcome here." The grand reopening was on a Saturday in mid-August. We'd spent weeks getting the word out through social media and local press. I was terrified no one would come, that we'd stand in our beautiful bookstore alone, having made a terrible mistake. But at 10 a.m., when we unlocked the doors, there was a line. People poured in: families, students, retirees, tourists. They browsed and bought books and drank coffee and told us how happy they were to have this space. Several people mentioned they were gay or had gay family members and thanked us for the inclusive atmosphere. One teenager, maybe 16, stood in the LGBTQ+ section for a long time, finally selecting a book about coming out. When she brought it to the register, her hands were shaking. "Is this for you or a gift?" I asked gently. "For me," she whispered. "My parents don't know yet." "Then this is on the house," Daniel said, waving away her money. "And if you ever need a safe place to read or just exist, you're always welcome here." She burst into tears and hugged us both. That night, after we'd closed up and counted the register, Daniel and I sat on the floor of our bookstore, exhausted and exhilarated. "We did it," I said, still not quite believing it. "We really did. Thank you for pushing me to take this leap. Thank you for being brave enough to jump." My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. "Saw the photos of your grand opening, looks amazing. Miguel and I are planning to visit next month." I smiled and showed Daniel. "They're coming to visit." "The cop from the checkpoint." "The friend from the checkpoint," I corrected, "who helped me find my way back to you." Over the next few months, the open book became exactly what we'd hoped: a community hub, a safe space, a place where people belonged. We hosted book clubs and author readings and open mic nights. We hired local teenagers and gave them a place to work where they could be themselves. And slowly, we became part of the fabric of Santa Fe. In October, Ethan and Miguel visited. It was surreal seeing Ethan out of uniform, relaxed and happy, with Miguel's arm casually around his shoulders. They browsed the store, marveling at what we'd built. "This is incredible," Ethan said. "You two have created something really special here." "We learned from the best," I told him. "You showed me what courage looks like." "You showed me first," he countered. "That night at the diner, when you were broken and scared but still honest about it, that's when I started to think maybe I could be honest too." Miguel shook his head, smiling. "You two are like each other's guardian angels or something." "Or just two people who needed a reminder that they weren't alone," Daniel suggested. We closed the store early that day and took them to dinner at our favorite restaurant. Over enchiladas and margaritas, Ethan told us about the changes in his life. He'd become an informal advocate in the police department for LGBTQ+ issues. The chief had even asked him to help develop sensitivity training. "It's not much," he said, "but it's something." And Reynolds, the officer from that checkpoint, he retired early, couldn't handle the new direction of the department. "Good riddance," Miguel said. The irony is, other closeted officers have started coming to me, looking for advice, for support. I'm becoming the person I needed 10 years ago. "That's beautiful," Daniel said. "What about you two?" Miguel asked. "When's the wedding?" Daniel and I looked at each other. We'd been so focused on the bookstore that we hadn't made any concrete plans. "Spring," I said, suddenly surprising myself. "Next spring, something small here in Santa Fe." "In the bookstore," Daniel's eyes lit up. "In the bookstore," I confirmed, "surrounded by books and coffee and the life we've built together." We set the date for May 15th, exactly 1 year after that checkpoint stop that had changed everything. The wedding planning was both easier and harder than I expected. Easier because we knew exactly what we wanted: simple, intimate, meaningful. Harder because my parents were still struggling with the idea of a same-sex wedding. "Can't you just have a private ceremony?" my mother asked during one tense phone call. "Does it have to be so public?" "Mom, we're not hiding. We've built a life here and we want to celebrate it with the people we love. If that's too hard for you to support, I understand, but I'm doing this with or without your blessing." There was a long silence. Then, "I'll be there, your father too. We might not understand everything, but you're our son, we'll be there." It was progress, small, imperfect progress, but progress nonetheless. Daniel's parents, by contrast, were thrilled. His mother immediately started planning and sending us Pinterest boards of decorations. His father offered to pay for the catering. "Let them have this," Daniel told me when I worried we were asking too much. "They love you almost as much as I do. This is their way of showing it." As winter turned to spring, the bookstore thrived. We'd hired 3 part-time employees, all young people who needed the kind of space we were creating. We'd expanded the coffee bar and started hosting a monthly LGBTQ plus youth group that drew kids from all over northern New Mexico. One evening in April, a teenager named Jordan came up to me. They were 17, non-binary, and had been coming to the youth group for months. "I wanted to thank you," Jordan said quietly. "Before I found this place, I thought I was the only person like me in the whole world, but here I found community. I found people who get it. You saved my life." I had to step into the back room to cry, because that's exactly why we'd done this, to be the place we'd needed when we were younger and scared and alone. The week before the wedding, Daniel's college friends threw us a bachelor party, a tame affair involving a brewery tour and terrible karaoke. My friends from San Francisco flew in and took us hiking. Sarah, my old roommate, arrived with her wife and their new baby, cooing over our bookstore and our love story. "I'm so glad you called him that night," she told me. "I was worried about you for so long, and now look at you thriving." I'm still surprised it worked out. Why, you loved each other, you were just scared, but love that real doesn't just disappear. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. Daniel was staying at Ethan and Miguel's hotel room. They'd come back for the wedding, and I was alone in our apartment above the bookstore. I walked downstairs and stood in the darkened store, looking at the shelves we'd filled with stories, the chairs where people sat and read, the community board covered with announcements and thank you notes. A year ago, I'd been stopped at a checkpoint, terrified and running, and now I was here, engaged in love. Running a business, part of a community. My phone rang. "Daniel." "Can't sleep either," I answered. "No, keep thinking about tomorrow." "Cold feet." "Warm feet, very warm, happy feet. I just wish it was tomorrow already." "Me too." "Adrian." "Yes." "Thank you for calling me that night. Thank you for being brave enough to try again. Thank you for getting on a plane. Thank you for not giving up on us. I never could. You're it for me. You always were." We talked until dawn about everything and nothing, until the sky started to lighten and the wedding day arrived. The wedding was perfect in its imperfection. Daniel's boutonniere fell apart twice. The cake tilted slightly to one side. My mother cried through the entire ceremony, though I couldn't tell if they were happy or sad tears. My father stood stoic but squeezed my shoulder afterward, which was his way of saying he was proud. We'd transformed the bookstore into a garden, flowers everywhere, twinkling lights, chairs arranged in a semicircle. About 50 people attended, family, friends, regulars from the shop, the kids from our youth group. Ethan was my best man. Miguel stood up for Daniel. When we exchanged vows, I kept mine simple. "Daniel, a year ago I was lost. I thought I knew where I was going, but I was just running away. And then you came back into my life and reminded me that the only place I need to be is with you. You've taught me that love isn't about being fearless, it's about being afraid and choosing love anyway. I choose you today and every day for the rest of my life." Daniel's vows were more eloquent because he'd always been better with words. "Adrian, loving you has been the easiest and hardest thing I've ever done. Easy because you're extraordinary, kind, and brilliant and brave in ways you don't even recognize. Hard because you were so afraid of losing me that you almost pushed me away. But we found our way back to each other, and I believe that's what real love does. It finds a way. So I promise you this, I will always find my way back to you no matter how lost we get, because you're my home." There wasn't a dry eye in the bookstore. We danced to a song Daniel had chosen, something soft and romantic that made my mother shake her head but smile. We cut the tilted cake and fed each other bites. We hugged everyone and thanked them for being part of our story. And when it was all over, when the guests had left and we'd cleaned up and were alone in our bookstore-turned-garden, Daniel pulled me close. "We did it," he said. "We're married." "We're married," I repeated, testing out the word. "Husband sounds weird." "You'll get used to it, husband." "I love you, husband." "I love you too, husband." We slow danced in the empty bookstore, surrounded by books and flowers and the life we'd built together. And I thought about that checkpoint, that moment when Officer Martinez had looked at me with recognition instead of judgment. So much had changed since that night. Ethan had found love and authenticity, we'd built a business and a life, we'd gotten married. But some things hadn't changed. I still reached for Daniel in the morning, I still loved the way he laughed at his own jokes, I still felt like the luckiest person alive that he'd chosen me. 2 weeks after the wedding, we were working in the shop when a young couple came in. They looked nervous, the way people do when they're not sure if they're welcome. "Hi," the taller one said hesitantly, "we're visiting from Texas. Someone told us this was a safe place." I understood immediately. Texas, safe place. They were asking if we were gay-friendly without actually saying the words. "You're in the right place," I said warmly. "Welcome to the open book, we're glad you're here." The relief on their faces was palpable. They spent 2 hours in the store, browsing and drinking coffee and slowly relaxing. When they left, they each bought a stack of books and thanked us profusely. "That was us," Daniel said after they'd gone. "A year ago, that was us, looking for places we could just exist without judgment. And now we get to be that place for other people. It's a good feeling. The best feeling." That night I called Ethan. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, how's married life?" "Pretty much the same as unmarried life, but with better tax benefits." He laughed. "That's romantic." "How are you? How's Miguel?" "Good, really good. We're thinking about moving in together. He's looking for work in Arizona." "Ethan, that's amazing." "I know, a year ago I couldn't even admit I was gay. Now I'm moving in with my boyfriend. My life is unrecognizable." "In the best way." "In the best way," he agreed. "And it's because of you, because you showed me it was possible." "We showed each other," I corrected. "That night at the checkpoint at the diner, we both needed to see that we weren't alone." "Have you ever thought about what would have happened if my partner had been the one to stop you instead of me, if I hadn't seen that photo?" "Sometimes, but I don't think anything happens by accident. I think we meet the people we need to meet when we need to meet them." "That's very philosophical." "I'm a bookstore owner now, I'm allowed to be philosophical." After we hung up, I found Daniel in our apartment upstairs, reading in bed. I climbed in beside him and he automatically put his arm around me. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything's perfect. I was just thinking about how a year ago I thought my life was ending and instead it was just beginning." "Our life," he corrected, "it was just beginning." "Our life," I agreed. Outside, Santa Fe was settling into night. Below us, our bookstore sat quiet and waiting for tomorrow's customers. And here, in this bed, in this life we'd chosen, I was finally completely home. The checkpoint had been a test, not of my papers or my car, but of my courage. And I'd failed it initially, running away instead of facing my fears. But I'd been given a second chance, a moment of recognition in a stranger's eyes that led me back to the love I'd almost lost. Some people might call it fate, others might call it luck. I call it grace, the unearned gift of seeing yourself reflected in another person's eyes and realizing you don't have to be alone anymore. Daniel kissed the top of my head. "What are you thinking about?" "Checkpoints and how sometimes the thing you think is an obstacle is actually a doorway." "That's very poetic." "I married a romantic, it's rubbing off on me." "Good, I like you romantic." "I love you, Daniel." "I love you too, Adrian, always." I fell asleep that night grateful for the checkpoint, for Ethan, for second chances, for the courage to choose love over fear. And I dreamed of roads stretching out ahead of us not as escape routes but as adventures yet to be taken. Together. 1 year later. The anniversary of that checkpoint stop came on a Tuesday in May, exactly 1 week after our first wedding anniversary. I almost didn't realize it until I was driving back from a book distributor meeting and passed a police checkpoint on the highway. My first instinct was the old one: fear, anxiety, hands gripping the wheel too tight. But then I saw the officer waving people through with a smile and I realized, not all checkpoints are threats, sometimes they're just part of the journey. I pulled over at a rest stop and called Ethan. "Do you realize what day it is?" I asked when he answered. "Tuesday." It's been exactly a year since you stopped me at that checkpoint. There was a pause and then, oh my god, I can't believe it's been a year. How have you been? We haven't talked in a couple weeks. Good, great, actually, Miguel proposed. I almost dropped my phone. What, when, why didn't you call me? It happened last night. We went hiking and he just asked, right there on top of a mountain. And you said yes. I said yes, Adrian, I'm getting married, me, the guy who couldn't even admit he was gay a year ago. I'm so happy for you, so unbelievably happy. We were thinking fall, October maybe, and we want you and Daniel to be there, obviously. We wouldn't miss it. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long time thinking about the past year. All the changes, all the growth, all the moments of courage from scared people choosing love. When I got back to Santa Fe, I told Daniel about Ethan's engagement. He immediately started planning. We could close the store for a weekend, make a road trip of it, maybe visit some of the places we'd stopped during our initial journey. It's like everything has come full circle, he said. Ethan finding love, us building this life, everyone moving forward instead of staying stuck. Do you ever regret it? I asked, leaving New York, buying the bookstore, all of it. Not for a second, do you? No. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. That weekend, we hosted a special event at the Open Book, a panel discussion on LGBTQ plus representation in literature. The store was packed, standing room only, with people of all ages hungry for stories that reflected their experiences. During the Q&A, a young man raised his hand. How do you create a space like this, where people feel safe to be themselves? I thought about my answer carefully. You start by being brave enough to be yourself, even when it's scary, especially when it's scary, because when you live authentically, you give other people permission to do the same. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. After the event, as we were closing up, Jordan, the non-binary teen who'd thanked me months ago, approached us with another young person. This is my partner Sam, Jordan said, beaming. We wanted you to meet them. We're going to college together in the fall. That's wonderful, Daniel said. Where are you going? UC Berkeley. They have a great LGBTQ plus studies program. Jordan looked at us with shining eyes. A year ago, I didn't think I'd make it to 18. I definitely didn't think I'd go to college or find someone who loves me for who I am. But then I found this place and you, and suddenly the future seemed possible. I hugged them both, too overwhelmed to speak. After they left, I turned to Daniel. Do you remember what you said to me that first night in the diner? Which part? You said I wasn't someone who didn't fight hard enough. You said I was someone who loved with everything I had. I remember. I didn't believe you then, but I think I do now. I think maybe love isn't about fighting hard or being fearless. It's about showing up even when you're scared. It's about building something together one day at a time. It's about creating spaces where other people can show up too. Daniel kissed me softly. When did you get so wise? I married someone who makes me better. No, you married someone who saw who you already were. We locked up the bookstore and walked up to our apartment, hand in hand. Through the window, I could see the lights of Santa Fe spreading out below us, and beyond that, the dark silhouette of the mountains against the stars. Somewhere out there, Ethan was planning a wedding with Miguel, Jordan and Sam were planning their future, and countless other people were fighting their own battles, facing their own checkpoints, trying to find the courage to be themselves. We couldn't save everyone, we couldn't even save ourselves, not really. But we could create a space where people felt less alone. We could tell our story and hope it helped someone else tell theirs. We could choose love again and again, even when it was hard. Maybe especially when it was hard. What are you thinking? Daniel asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. That I'm grateful for that checkpoint, for Ethan, for you getting on a plane, for all of it. Even the painful parts led us here. To our bookstore. To our home. To our life. To our life, I agreed. And as we stood there looking out at the world we'd chosen to be part of, I realized something important. I wasn't running anymore. Not from my past, not from my fears, not from happiness. I was finally completely still. And in that stillness, I had found everything I'd been searching for. The end. Author's note: this story is dedicated to everyone who's ever felt like they had to hide who they are. To everyone who's been stopped at a checkpoint, literal or metaphorical, and worried about what would be found. To everyone who's run away from love because they were too scared to stay. You are seen, you are valued, you are loved. And your story matters.